Hello, I'm Avis Kaufsbeck, and this is the Peace is Here podcast. Welcome to Peacewarts, School of Peacecraft and Inquiry, where we practice the skills of peace through short classes. We take the peace work seriously, but not ourselves. If you're joining us mid-school year, you're not late. Orientation begins at episode 198. Welcome back to Peacewarts, Peace Scholars. This is Social Chemistry 101 in the lab. Today we are timing the reaction. In our previous classes, we learned about the cracked cauldron and the priority of temperature. Today we look at the clock. In the lab, the moment a catalyst touches the solution is the most volatile period. In social chemistry, that period is 90 seconds. The 20th century American psychologist Sylvan Tompkins, who mapped the biology of human affect, once observed, "I view affect as the primary innate biological motivating mechanism, more urgent than drive, deprivation, and pleasure, and more urgent even than physical pain." The entry, the cortisol tint. We begin with the 90-second chemical dump. When you enter a room where tension exists, or when a conflict starts, the brain initiates a rapid hormonal secretion. Adrenaline and cortisol flood the system almost instantly. This is the cortisol tint. For the first 90 seconds, the participants are not seeing the world clearly. They are seeing it through the chemical lens of a survival threat. This is the curse of the cold opening. If a meeting starts with, "We need to talk about what went wrong," or a domestic conversation begins with, "I'm disappointed," you have effectively poisoned the beaker before the second sentence. Everything said afterward is tinted by that initial spike. A neutral facial expression is interpreted as a sneer. A request for information is heard as an interrogation. The mistake most people make is trying to solve the problem while the tint is at its darkest. A peace scholar learns that the first 90 seconds are not for solving. They are for stabilizing the tint through orientation. The history. The 1914 Willie-Nicky telegrams and the 1996 Atlanta standoff. We look to history to see how the initial 90 seconds of an interaction can lock in a disaster or secure a life-saving peace. In the final days before World War I, Kaiser Wilhelm II and Tsar Nicholas II exchanged a series of telegrams. Despite being cousins and using the affectionate names Willie and Nicky, the initial tint of their communication was dominated by the rapid mobilization of their respective armies. Because each telegram was received in a state of high-stress chemical dumping, they interpreted each other's pleas for peace as manipulative delays. The first 90 seconds of reading those dispatches set a tone of betrayal that neither leader could chemically overcome, resulting in a global reaction they both claimed to fear. Contrast this with the 1996 Atlanta standoff handled by FBA crisis negotiator Gary Noesner. When an armed, highly agitated suspect took hostages in a residential building, Noesner knew that the first 90 seconds of contact would dictate whether the situation devolved into violence. He did not begin with a cold opening of legal threats or rigid demands. Instead, he delivered a steady orientation statement, introducing himself by name, setting a slow, predictable tone, and framing their immediate safety as a shared objective. By refusing to add more cortisol to the gunman's system during that critical opening window, Noesner stabilized the initial panic. The gunman's chemical spike dissolved, allowing negotiators to maintain a calm dialogue that led to the safe release of all hostages and a peaceful surrender without a single shot fired. The thesis, orientation as intervention. The lesson for today is that you cannot win a meeting in the first 90 seconds, but you can certainly lose it. To manage the cortisol tint, we use the following stabilization protocols. 1. The non-threatening arrival. We enter the space with open body language and a neutral, steady pace. We do not rush, as rushing signals a biological emergency to everyone in the room. 2. The orientation statement. Instead of diving into the problem, we describe the process. That is, here is what we're going to look at today, and here is how long it will take. This lowers cortisol by replacing the unknown with a predictable structure. 3. Weathering the spike. If the other person attacks in the first 90 seconds, we recognize it as a chemical discharge. We do not react. We wait for the 90-second clock to run down before we attempt to pivot to the content. The Commons Forge. How does managing the cortisol tint support a world of sharing? When civic assemblies, community boards, or local negotiations open with aggressive demands or unpredictable posturing, participants experience an immediate spike in threat hormones that triggers defensive hoarding and suspicion. A cold opening closes the door to public trust. By introducing clear orientation statements and steadying the first 90 seconds of public dialogue, a peace scholar buffers the collective nervous system. This initial stabilization preserves the relational open field needed for open resource sharing, collaborative stewardship, and long-term civic trust. The quenching agent, micropractice. A peace scholar understands that the start of the reaction is a biological event, not a logical one. If you can stay steady while the cortisol tint is at its peak, you provide the clear beaker where a new solution can eventually form. Practice the 90-second stabilization window today. Don't try to solve until the tint begins to dissolve. Homework. 1. Look up the 1996 Atlanta standoff handled by Gary Noesner and read about the initial contract made by the negotiation team. How did the initial introduction set the tone? 2. Write down one question about any of this episode's topics. If you don't have a question, just write no question. 3. Optional. The next time you walk into a meeting or a potentially tense conversation, time yourself. Practice using an orientation statement describing the how before the what, and watch the tint of the room. If you'd like to read more on this subject, some book suggestions are Molecules of Emotion by Candace B. Pert, a foundational text explaining the immediate biological mechanics of emotional chemical floods and how hormonal shifts dictate human perception before cognitive reasoning takes over. And The Nervous System Reset by Jessica McGuire, a practical guide on understanding nervous system states, regulating the acute physiological stress response, and navigating the initial 90-second chemical wave. These are also in the show notes with the homework. The reaction. A sustainable reaction is an oriented reaction. Social chemistry is a chemistry that honors the clock of biology before demanding the progress of logic. Until our next class, keep your elements stable. Class dismissed. Thank you for listening. If you're looking for your next read, I write books about strong friends, wild places, and a future worth the effort. The Pedro the Water Dog Saves the Planet series follows two best friends, Tilly and Camus, strong, funny, and in love with the wild world, who decide their small choices add up to something. Hopeful eco-fiction for grown-ups, climate fiction without the doom. You can jump in anywhere or start with book 1. In one more year, Tilly can swim like a dolphin and run like the wind. She just never learned to cycle, which is a problem because she's decided to attempt her first Ironman. Her reason isn't glory. It's a quiet, stubborn idea. If one ordinary person can finish something this hard, maybe a whole town can be talked into buying less, wasting less, and keeping their stuff longer. One more year. To pull it off, Tilly leans on her best friend and coach Camus, tattooed, tequila-loving, and exactly the voice you'd want yelling at you from the shore, plus a gruff retired cycling pro hiding out on a private island, a pack of maverick mountain bikers, a salty old pirate named Ike, and Pedro, her devoted water dog. Together they train, scheme, fall a little in love, and slowly realize their northwest lake town of Sandglass is facing a threat bigger than any race. My books are available wherever books are sold, including at avaskolfsbeck.com. Podcast music is by Javier Peque Rodriguez, and the track is I Am Late, Madame Curie. Sound effects are from Pixabay. Regarding peace, we need not delay or despair. We are not late. We are right on time to love. We are all scholars of peace. Listen for the peace.